Okay, could you start by introducing yourself then?
Okay, hi, I'm Joseph Salem. I'm 23 years old and I work in cybersecurity and I live in the UK. I live in Surrey.
Okay, I've got 4 questions for you today, and I'm gonna start with, could you describe one stressful event that has impacted you?
Oh, okay. Yes, I can actually. I've got loads. But what I will say is this: the sort of stressful event that impacted me was, well, I don't know what sort of detail I can get into here, but it was when I was dealing with my anxiety and depression, sort of at its peak, if you will, and everything was coming a bit too much for me. And this was before I was on medication. This was before, I was seeing a therapist and stuff. But I was at university, and it was about 1 a.m. And what happened was that I started to have an anxiety attack, started to really struggle to breathe properly and really struggling. And I think a lot of it was due to a lot of stress with university. It's my second year and stuff. Now, I dealt with the first year absolutely fine, but to cut a long story short, it's basically that I wasn't happy within myself, wasn't happy there. I was very much stressed, not because of the work of the university, but in actual fact stressed because I wasn't happy within myself. But I kept denying to myself that I wasn't happy. I was like, oh, I'll be fine, I'll push through it, it's okay. And I kept telling myself I was fine. And that added the stress of, getting even worse, because I essentially was denying myself, the opportunity to actually help myself and realize, okay, maybe this isn't for me, maybe this isn't right for me. I need to look after myself, and I didn't. And in the most stressful moment for me was I was struggling to calm myself down, so I sort of do something that I think a lot of people do in emergencies, is call their parents, and I call my mum. Luckily, she keeps her phone next to her at the end of the day, so bear in mind, I was at university, I was away, and Birmingham City is around about 3.5 hour drive, about 2.5 hour train, so a fair distance. And I did feel alone, but I reached out for help. With my mother, and it was stressful because I don't think stress is even one of many emotions I felt. I felt almost all of them at once, and she answered the phone saying, "Hi, what's up? How you doing?" And I'm there like I'm trying to keep it together. I'm trying to keep it, all happy. So like, yeah, I'm just going to see how you're doing, And after like literally a minute, I just broke down. I couldn't keep it in, and all these emotions, everything flooding, came flooding through, and I just absolutely broke down. And it was probably the most stressful because I felt afterwards, almost felt nothing in a way, but almost at the same time almost felt everything. I didn't really know what to do. Granted, the next day I had lectures, I had exams to revise for, coursework. I studied computer forensics, and so I was just like, okay, I'll just do that. And I just wasn't even from that point on, I was on autopilot, to be honest. I wasn't really all there. So that was probably the most stressful event in my life in terms of sort of an event I can pinpoint as where I felt on my own, and I felt that I didn't really have any help. Like sort of no one else in the world in that specific moment understood what I was going through. That was probably the single point of stress that I can identify that happened in my life.
Okay. So when you were in that stressful bubble, then how did you cope with it?
Well, it's interesting. I think I didn't really cope with it, to be honest. I sort of ignored it. I guess you could argue that is a coping mechanism in and of itself, is just ignoring in a situation. Do I recommend anyone to do this? No. Ignoring your stress, ignoring what's going on is a very, very, very much a bad thing, because you're basically living in denial, and you're almost, you're hurting yourself more than anything else. How I coped with it, I guess, was that I just sort of tried to carry on each day. Granted, I wasn't happy. I didn't feel anything. I felt almost nothing really, and a lot of my friends didn't really know what was going on with me. Some didn't know when I was picked up, and So I guess the way I cope with it is just to sort of carry on. I just kept moving forward. I kept trying to get through each day. And, you know, granted, after I spoke to my mother and after I let it all out, it was an odd time because, again, I didn't know what was going to happen. But I just basically said, I've got things to do. So I just tried to keep myself occupied. And I did, really, just through education, exams and stuff, you know. That's how I really coped with it. I just coped with it by doing things that I knew I needed to do. Should I have done that? No. I should have absolutely gone out of that environment and left, and that would have been a better coping mechanism because I would have gone back home and, you know, to my mum and dad's and have that around me so I wouldn't feel so alone. So, but the way I coped with it was just literally trying to get through the last parts of the second year of university. That was the way I coped through it, is basically trying to tackle each problem ahead and be like, okay, I've got to do this, got to do that, got to do this assignment, got this exam to revise for, got this lecture to go to. I did things one at a time. That's how I coped with it. Was it the best way to deal with it? Oh gosh, no, it was probably one of the worst ways I could do it, but it's something that I just sort of did, and it ended up sort of working out for me because I managed to keep going. So then when I finished, I could get back home and sort myself out. But yeah, I coped with it, I guess, by basically continuing to do whatever was asked of me in terms of like tasks, you know, sort of focuses, assignments, whatever, you know, something kind of material in a way, and just sort of focus on that instead of focusing on the emotional, the gravity of the situation. So yeah.
Okay, and then, but afterwards you got help, right?
Yes, I did, yeah.
So now that you've gotten better and you've got help, how do you manage your day-to-day stressful situations?
Good question. Well, I'm in a better spot by far than when I was 5 years ago. Gosh, a while ago. From when I was at university. And what I will say is this: how I cope with my stress and how I deal with day-to-day. What it is I look at it as like this: things may annoy me, things may upset me, but what I do is I try and take that and be like, do I really need to be angry about this? Is this something that's in my control or out of my control? And funnily enough, a lot of the things I get stressed about are actually out of my control. Therefore, I look at it as like, okay, if it's out of my control, why do I need to worry about it? All I need to focus on is just what happens next and moving on from there. Not worrying about what happened in the past, not worrying about things I can't change, things that are out of my control. You know, with work, for example, if I have a client that is, is basically being troublesome and being demanding. Yes, of course, it's stressful. It's not easy, but I deal with it as, okay, what can I do to help? And if I show them I've done everything to help them, then in theory there's no issue. The issue is them. That's one thing I do with sort of work and that stuff. But in terms of how I cope by mainly focusing on talking to friends, family, mostly good friends, you know, online and through my phone stuff, giving calls and all that. And I'm quite blessed because the friends that I've got are ones that are worth keeping, and so that for me is something that I always like to remind myself of and keep going with. And that's my cognition, really. It's kind of not necessarily having a support group. It's the wrong way to look at it, because that's what we're saying is if they're, you know, are like, oh yeah, I'll help you with that stuff. It's not necessarily like that. It's more of that I just talk to them. I just go talk to my friends and say hello, how you doing, and we just discuss things. And from that point on, it makes it easier, because listening to what they talk about is what they go through and what I go through. It's very much similar and different in many different unique ways. And so you have a situation where you kind of have a support group. You have almost, if you will, a therapist-like group that, you know, no one really realizes you're actually doing therapy or you're doing things to help each other. So you're just talking to each other. And that most times is enough to get through a lot of things. That's how I cope with my stress, is I talk to my friends, my family, and tell them about my day, and then they talk to me about their day, and it helps me understand their problems they're going through. Sometimes they go through something similar, sometimes they go through something completely different, and it helps you gain perspective and a unique sort of outlook on your problems and theirs, and it helps with the whole process of dealing with said problems and stress in your life.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all I have. Oh, that's all the
Okay.
questions I have for you today. Thank you so much for your time. I
No
really
worries. No worries.
appreciate it. Yeah. Okay.